Long before the settlers came, the native peoples of the plains knew the secrets of surviving the coldest winters. A sacred technique, forgotten by many, would keep the tribe safe without the smoke that filled the air. Before we begin, share where you're watching from. If the wisdom of the old ways speaks to your heart, subscribe and join us for the next story of survival, spirit, and ancient knowledge coming soon. The cold winds of winter arrived early, threatening to freeze those unprepared. A forgotten technique, passed down through the ages, offered the tribe a way to stay warm without the smoke. As the days grew shorter and the cold crept in, the village faced its greatest test. The winds howled across the plains, and with them came the spirit of the cold, a force that could freeze life from even the strongest warrior. Those who had lived through winters before knew what was coming, but to the younger members of the tribe it was still a mystery, an unknown enemy that arrived every year and tested their endurance. The elders spoke of the old ways, how the ancestors had once lived in harmony with the land and the elements, never allowing the cold to conquer them. The traditional way to stay warm was simple: a fire, a circle of family, and a layer of animal hides. Yet, as the nights grew colder and the winds more biting, even the heart of the fire could not keep the chill from creeping in. The smoke from their fires would fill the Tipis, burning their eyes and choking the air. The people grew restless, concerned that their way of life might not be enough to protect them against the harshest season. Around the fire, the young warriors and women gathered, their faces filled with worry as they discussed what could be done. They had always believed that their way of life, the practices passed down from the elders, was enough. But now doubts began to surface. Their ancestors had built their homes in a way that connected them to the land, but what if those ways no longer served? What if they were not as wise as they thought? One elder, a woman with deep wrinkles on her face, stood and shared an ancient story that the tribe had not heard in many moons. She spoke of a time long ago when the ancestors of the people had used the land itself to protect them from the cold. The tribe had learned to heat their tipis without filling them with smoke, using the earth's natural gifts in a way that few remembered now. The elder's voice grew stronger as she shared the sacred knowledge of the stones, how they could hold the warmth of the fire, radiating it long after the flames had died down. This ancient technique, forgotten by many, was the tribe's answer. The warmth would no longer be a battle against the smoke, but a bond with the land. The time had come to remember the old ways. The people gathered, determined to prepare for the trials ahead and to call upon the wisdom of their ancestors. As the cold began to gnaw at the bones of the people, the shaman had a dream. In the dream, the great spirit of the earth spoke to him, urging him to remember a forgotten way. The vision showed a teepee filled with warmth, yet not a single wisp of smoke curled into the sky. The shaman woke with a sense of urgency and reverence. This was a message from the spirits. He gathered the village's most trusted builders and began to teach them the old ways, a method lost to time. In the stillness of the winter's approach, they would rebuild their homes not just for survival, but for harmony with the land itself. The shaman's teachings were not just a call to action, they were a reminder of the sacredness of the earth and its elements. He spoke of the land's wisdom, of how it held the power to both sustain and challenge life. In the dream, the spirit had shown him a way to live in balance with the harshness of winter, using the stones that lay beneath their feet. The stones would become their guardians against the cold, absorbing the heat of the fire and radiating it through the night without filling the air with smoke. The people listened carefully, their hearts filled with awe and uncertainty. They had never heard of such a method. The concept of heating their homes without smoke was foreign to them, a dreamlike idea that seemed almost impossible. Yet, as the shaman spoke of the ancestors, of the old ways that had been forgotten, the doubt began to fade. They understood that their survival was tied to the earth, and the earth had provided the answer. With the shaman's guidance, the people set out to gather the materials they would need. The builders worked together, each knowing their role. Some gathered the stones, others built the foundations of the tipis, and some prepared the sacred fire that would ignite the process. The air was filled with a sense of purpose, as though the spirits were watching over them. As the stones were carefully selected and placed near the fire, the people felt a deep connection to their ancestors. It was as if the very earth beneath them had awakened, ready to share its secrets once more. The tribe was not just building shelter, they were reconnecting with an ancient wisdom that had been passed down through the generations. The process was slow, but with each stone placed, the tribe's confidence grew. They knew this was more than just a building technique, it was a sacred act of survival. The stones, once cold and lifeless, would now hold the warmth of the fire, a fire that would no longer fill the air with smoke, but would provide the comfort of heat without danger. As the last stone was set in place, the shaman offered a prayer to the spirits, thanking them for their guidance. The teepee was ready. The warmth inside, guided by the power of the stones, would protect the tribe through the harshest winter. But the real test was yet to come. Among the tribe was a young warrior named Tonka. He had heard the stories from his elders about the ancient ways of the land, but he never imagined he would witness such an innovation. Tonka had always been skeptical of the old ways, thinking them nothing more than myths. But as the days grew colder and the pressure to find a solution to the smoke-filled Tipis mounted, Tonka's heart began to change. The shaman's teachings filled him with awe, and he became determined to understand the science behind the stone technique. With each stone placed near the fire, Tonka realized that the balance between fire and stone was not just a method of survival. It was a sacred connection to the earth that had been gifted to his people long ago. The night before, he had sat by the fire, watching the others place the stones with reverence, yet something inside him remained unsettled. It was as if the stones were more than just tools. They seemed to pulse with an energy he could not explain. The warmth they radiated was undeniable, but it was the way the smoke danced around the fire that intrigued him most. Unlike the usual curling tendrils of smoke that filled the teepee, these stones kept the air clear. It was as though the very nature of the fire had changed, and yet there was a sense that this was not a new discovery, but a forgotten practice being remembered by the people. Tonka went to the edge of the camp, his feet crunching through the frozen snow as he walked beneath the stars. He gazed up at the sky, wondering how many nights like this his ancestors had spent, living in harmony with the land and the elements. The fire had always been a powerful force, but now it seemed to be something more. The stones were not just retaining heat, they were guiding the fire, controlling it in a way that no one had fully understood. Tonka's heart began to race with the possibility that the earth had given them more than just survival. It had given them wisdom, a knowledge that had been buried beneath the weight of years and generations, waiting for someone to remember. The next morning, as the fire blazed once again inside the newly built teepee, Tonka approached the shaman. His mind was filled with questions, but more than anything, he felt a sense of awe. The warmth inside the teepee was unlike any fire he had ever known. The air was clean, and the flames seemed to dance with a life of their own. The fire was no longer an adversary, threatening to overwhelm the space with smoke. It was a part of the earth, a force that was now in balance with the world around them. "Shaman," Tonka began, his voice steady but filled with wonder. "How did our ancestors know to use the stones in this way? How did they understand the fire and the earth so completely?" The shaman looked at him, his eyes deep with ancient knowledge. "It is not something we can explain with words, young warrior. It is a gift, a bond between us and the land. We are but caretakers of the earth's wisdom. The stones hold the fire's warmth, but they also hold the memory of our people, of all who came before us. When we live in balance with the land, it shares its secrets." Tonka's heart swelled with understanding. The fire, the stones, and the earth were all connected in a way that went beyond survival. It was about respect, harmony, and the ancient wisdom that had been passed down for generations. The tribe was not merely using the stones to survive. They were embracing a deeper connection to the land, to the spirits that guided them, and to the earth that had always provided for them. As the sun began to rise, casting its golden light across the camp, Tonka felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stone heating technique was more than just a way to survive the cold. It was a reminder that they were not separate from the land, but an integral part of it. The tribe's survival was not only about fire and warmth, but about living in a sacred relationship with the earth. And Tonka knew that, in the days to come, he would carry that knowledge forward. Tonka and the tribe's builders set out to gather the materials for the new stone heating system. The land, coated in frost and the first snow of the season, seemed to hold its breath as the people walked through it. Every step felt deliberate, as if the earth itself guided their movements. The stones they sought were not just objects, they were sacred gifts from the earth, their purpose waiting to be revealed. The builders selected large, smooth stones from the riverbeds. They could feel the weight of each stone, sensing the earth's power within it. These stones, though cold now, would soon absorb the heat of the fire and slowly release it, warming the teepee without filling the air with smoke. Tonka watched as the builders, skilled in their craft, worked together in silence. The firewood was gathered, the stones chosen, and the teepee itself constructed with care, each step a reflection of the tribe's deep respect for the land. As night began to fall, the work continued by the dimming light of the fire. The stone circle was laid around the fire pit, each stone placed in its proper position. Tonka, who had grown skeptical of the old ways, began to understand their wisdom. He watched as the stones, one by one, were carefully stacked near the fire. Their smooth surfaces absorbed the heat, their purpose becoming clear. These were no ordinary stones, they were instruments of warmth, sent to guide the people through the cold, to shelter them from the harsh winds of winter. The fire burned brightly as Tonka stood beside it, feeling the warmth radiating from the stones. The air inside the teepee remained clear, the smoke no longer a threat. The warmth spread steadily, like a promise from the earth itself. The tribe was building more than just shelter, they were reconnecting with their ancestors, embracing the old ways with reverence and care. This was not merely a way to survive the winter, it was a way to live in harmony with the land. Tonka looked around at the tribe, their faces illuminated by the firelight. The task before them was slow, but it was sacred. Each stone, each piece of firewood, was a step toward a deeper connection with the earth. Tonka understood now that their survival was not just about keeping warm, it was about restoring balance with the land. The stones would hold the warmth of the fire, but they would also hold the memory of the people, the wisdom of their ancestors. The teepee was not just a structure, it was a symbol of the tribe's unity with the earth. By the time the work was complete, Tonka could feel the difference in the air. The warmth from the stones lingered long after the fire had begun to die down. The people gathered around, feeling the comfort of the warmth that would carry them through the long winter nights. The night came, and with it, the first test of the tribe's new heating system. The air was cold, the wind biting and relentless. Snow had begun to fall, but inside the teepee, the people sat close to the fire, uncertain but hopeful. The stones, glowing red from the fire, radiated warmth, and the air inside remained clear, free from smoke. Tonka sat beside the fire, watching as the flames flickered and cast soft shadows against the walls. The warmth was different now. It wasn't just the fire, it was the stones, holding the heat and releasing it steadily throughout the night. The people watched in silence, amazed. The children, once fearful of the smoke-filled air, now sat near the fire, their faces glowing in its warmth. The elders smiled, their hearts light with the realization that the old ways had returned. As the night deepened, the fire burned low, but the warmth from the stones remained. Tonka marveled at how the air inside stayed warm, how the cold did not creep in as it had in the past. The fire had always been a companion, but now it was a partner, no longer a force that filled the air with smoke, but one that worked in balance with the earth's gifts. The stones had become the heart of the warmth, absorbing the heat and gently releasing it through the night. The people slept soundly, comforted by the warmth that filled the teepee. The cold winds howled outside, but they were no longer a threat. The stones held the fire's warmth, allowing the tribe to rest in peace. Tonka lay down to sleep, his mind at ease for the first time in days. The stone heating system had worked, and with it, the tribe had found not just warmth, but a deeper connection to the land and their ancestors. As Tonka drifted to sleep, he felt the presence of the earth, the spirits that had guided them. The land had provided its wisdom, and the tribe had honored it. The first night of warmth had passed, and with it, the tribe's belief in the old ways was restored. They were not just surviving the winter, they were thriving in harmony with the earth, a harmony that would carry them through the coldest of nights. As the days passed, the tribe's connection with the land deepened. The stone heating technique became a sacred ritual, performed with respect and gratitude. The people no longer saw it as just a method to survive the winter. They began to understand it as a blessing from the earth itself, a gift from the spirits that guided them through the hardest seasons. Each night, the fire burned with the stones close by, and each morning, the warmth still lingered, filling the air with a sense of comfort that seemed to come not just from the fire, but from the earth beneath them. The shaman, wise and serene, continued to guide the tribe with his teachings. He spoke often of the spirits of the land, the spirits that had always watched over the people and provided them with the knowledge they needed. The fire, he explained, was a living force, just like the land, the wind, and the stones. It was not something to be tamed or controlled, but something to be respected, understood, and worked with. The spirits had shared their wisdom, and the people were now in tune with the earth's heartbeat. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, the tribe gathered around the fire, not just to warm themselves, but to honor the stones and the spirits. The shaman would offer prayers, calling upon the spirits of the ancestors to bless the tribe with continued warmth and safety. The people would sit in silence, listening to the crackling of the fire, feeling the heat radiating from the stones, and reflecting on the harmony they had found with the land. The smoke that once filled their homes had become a symbol of the fire's power. Not something to fear, but a reminder of the balance they had achieved. Tonka, now fully understanding the significance of the stones, would often find himself lost in thought as he sat by the fire. He thought of the stories the shaman had shared, the teachings passed down through generations, and the connection they now had with the earth. He knew that this knowledge had not just kept them warm, it had brought them closer to the spirits of the land, allowing them to live in harmony with the world around them. One evening, as the first heavy snow of the season began to fall, the shaman called for a gathering. The entire tribe sat around the fire, the warmth of the stones filling the space. The shaman, with his eyes closed and his hands raised to the sky, offered a final prayer. Great Spirit of the earth, he spoke softly, his voice carrying through the crisp air. We thank you for your wisdom. May these stones continue to warm our homes and our hearts. May the fire always burn without smoke, and may our people always remember the teachings of our ancestors. As the shaman finished his prayer, the tribe sat in silence, feeling the weight of the moment. The air was still, and the only sound was the soft crackling of the fire. In that moment, Tonka felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. He understood now that their survival was not just a matter of finding warmth, it was a matter of finding balance with the land, of living in a sacred relationship with the earth. One bitterly cold day, a stranger arrived at the tribe's village. He was a traveler, lost and seeking refuge from the harsh winds of winter. The snow had already begun to pile high, and the cold air bit into his skin. He was a man from the distant lands of the settlers' world, far from the tribe's familiar territory. He had been wandering for days, his supplies exhausted and his strength nearly gone. The winds had driven him from his path, and the heavy snow had left him with no choice but to seek shelter. The tribe welcomed him into their camp, offering him food and warmth. As he entered the teepee, his eyes widened with surprise. The air inside was warm, and the usual smell of smoke was absent. The fire burned steadily, but it was different, clear, and powerful, without the usual sting of smoke that would fill the air. The stranger sat beside the fire, his body stiff from the cold, and marveled at the warmth that surrounded him. He had never seen anything like it before. The cold of the outside world seemed distant, and the warmth felt almost magical. Tonka, who had been watching the stranger closely, approached him with a respectful bow. "You are welcome here," Tonka said, his voice filled with both curiosity and pride. "This warmth comes from the stones. They hold the fire's heat and give it back to us through the night. It is an old way, passed down by our ancestors. The stranger, still in shock, asked, "How is it possible? How do these stones keep the air so warm without the smoke?" Tonka smiled, understanding the confusion. "The stones are gifts from the earth. They absorb the heat from the fire and hold it, releasing it slowly. They keep the air clean, so we do not suffer from smoke in our lungs. It is a way of living in balance with the land." The stranger listened carefully, his eyes wide with awe. He had lived in the settler's world, where fires were necessary to keep warm in the brutal winters, but the smoke was always a problem. There was no way to escape it. The idea of living in such harmony with the earth was a concept foreign to him. "You live with the land, not against it," the stranger whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "I have never seen such wisdom." Tonka nodded, feeling a deep pride in the ancient knowledge that had been passed down through the generations. "We are part of the land. We do not fight the cold or the elements. We work with them." As the stranger rested by the fire, Tonka could see the change in him. The warmth and the wisdom of the tribe had begun to take root in his heart. And though he was far from his own people, the stranger understood that the tribe's ways were not just about survival, they were about connection. The stranger, a man from the settler's world, spent several days with the tribe, learning their ways and watching them work. As the days passed, the warmth of the stone heating system continued to amaze him. The fire burned steady, the stones radiated warmth, and the air inside the teepee remained clear, despite the freezing temperatures outside. The stranger had never known such peace in winter, never felt the cold so far away. It was as though the tribe had discovered a secret to survival that his people had never understood. One evening, after the stranger had shared a meal with the tribe, Tonka found him sitting alone by the fire, his gaze distant. The man seemed lost in thought, his mind grappling with what he had seen and learned. Tonka approached him quietly, sitting beside him without a word. For a long while neither spoke, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the whisper of the wind outside. Finally, the stranger turned to Tonka, his expression a mixture of awe and contemplation. "I've traveled across the plains, across rivers and mountains, but never have I seen such a way of living. You live in balance with the earth using its gifts, its wisdom. We've always fought against the elements in the settler world. But here, you've learned to coexist." Tonka nodded, understanding the man's struggle. "The land is not our enemy. It is a part of us. We must learn to live with it, to understand its rhythm, its flow. The stones, the fire, the wind, these are not forces to fight, but forces to respect." The stranger's eyes narrowed as if something had clicked in his mind. "In our world, we've always tried to conquer nature, build walls to block the wind, cut down forests to clear land. But we never considered that the land itself could be our ally, that we could use its own power to live." Tonka felt a surge of pride in the stranger's words. This was what the tribe had known all along. The secret to survival was not just in brute strength or domination, but in harmony and respect for the land. The knowledge passed down by the ancestors was not just for physical survival, but for spiritual and emotional balance as well. It was a way of living that transcended mere existence. It was a way of thriving. The stranger leaned forward, his voice serious. "I'm not sure how this knowledge was lost, but it is powerful. And it is something that must be shared. My people, they do not know this way. They will fight against the cold until they understand that it is not a battle to win, but a way to live with the earth." Tonka could see the change in the stranger's heart. His journey was no longer about survival in the wilderness. It was about sharing the wisdom he had learned here among the tribe. "You now carry the knowledge," Tonka said softly. "It is yours to share, but always with respect for the land." The stranger nodded. He understood now that the true power was in living with the earth, not against it. And as he prepared to leave, he knew that this knowledge would stay with him, changing the way he saw the world forever. The coldest winter the tribe had ever known descended upon them. Snow blanketed the land, and the winds screamed across the plains, biting at everything in their path. The temperature dropped so low that even the bravest warriors hesitated to venture outside for long. But inside the Tipis, the warmth of the fire and the heat stored in the stones held strong. The test had come, and the stone heating method would prove itself once and for all. The first storm arrived before the tribe was ready. The winds howled like wolves, and the snow piled up so high that it was nearly impossible to see past the tips of the Tipis. The fire burned steadily inside, its warmth radiating from the stones that had been placed carefully around it. The tribe huddled together, staying close to the warmth, knowing that this storm was just the beginning of what was to come. Tonka sat beside the fire, watching the flames as they danced and flickered. The heat from the stones enveloped him, soothing the chill in his bones. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the teepee, the people felt safe. The stones, glowing with the fire's warmth, continued to radiate heat, even as the flames died down. They had built this system with care, knowing that their survival depended on it. And now, as the storm unleashed its fury, they felt the fruits of their labor. As the night wore on, the winds grew fiercer and the snow piled higher. But inside the teepee, the warmth remained. The fire may have waned, but the stones held steady, releasing their warmth into the space. The tribe slept soundly, their breath visible in the cold air, but their bodies warm and protected by the stones. The cold outside could not reach them. By morning, the storm had passed, and the tribe emerged from their Tipis to find the world transformed. The snow had drifted so high that it was nearly impossible to see beyond the camp. The temperature had dropped even further, and the land felt like a vast, unwelcoming expanse. But the tribe felt no fear. The stones had proven themselves, the warmth inside their homes had held strong, and the cold had been kept at bay. Tonka, standing outside in the biting wind, looked back at the village. He saw the smoke rising from the chimneys of the Tipis, a sign that the warmth inside had not faltered. The stone heating technique had withstood the test of the harshest winter the tribe had ever faced. It had kept the people safe, warm, and alive. For Tonka, the lesson was clear. Survival was not about fighting the elements, but about understanding them. The earth had shared its wisdom, and the tribe had learned to live in harmony with it. And as the snow continued to fall, the tribe knew they would survive this winter, just as they had survived every winter before, with respect for the land and its gifts. As the seasons passed, the stone heating method became more than just a way to survive winter. It became a symbol of the tribe's resilience and wisdom. The people now understood that their survival was not just about enduring the harshness of the seasons, but about living in a way that honored the earth and the spirits that guided them. The warmth of the stones and the balance they brought was a testament to this deeper connection. Tonka, now a respected leader among the tribe, often found himself reflecting on the lessons of the past winters. The technique had proven itself time and time again, even as the weather grew colder and the storms more severe. With every passing season, the people grew stronger, more connected to the earth, and more confident in their ability to live in harmony with nature. They had not just learned to survive, they had learned to thrive, finding warmth in the gifts the land had provided. The stone heating method had also become a teaching tool for the younger generation. Tonka, alongside the elders, took it upon himself to pass on the sacred knowledge to the children of the tribe. Every year, as the first signs of winter approached, the tribe would gather around the fire to hear the stories of their ancestors and the wisdom of the stones. The children listened with wide eyes, eager to learn the lessons that would help them survive in the coming months. One evening, after the tribe had finished their evening prayers and the fire was dying down, Tonka spoke to the people. "The stones are not just a way to warm our bodies," he said, his voice steady and clear. "They are a reminder of our connection to the earth. We have learned that survival is not about fighting the cold, but about understanding it, respecting it, and working with it. These stones are our teachers." The people gathered around him, their faces glowing in the firelight. The children, now young adults, nodded in understanding. They had grown up with the knowledge of the stones, and they knew that the lessons they carried were not just about keeping warm, they were about living in balance with the earth. As the years went on, the stone heating technique became a part of their way of life, passed down from one generation to the next. The tribe continued to live with the land, using its gifts to survive, but also honoring it with every step they took. They understood that the earth, like the fire, must be respected. In turn, it would provide them with warmth, shelter, and sustenance. When Tonka looked around at the village, he saw the legacy of the stones. He saw a people who had not only survived, but had flourished. The teachings of the ancestors had been carried forward, and the earth's wisdom had become an enduring part of their culture. The stones, glowing softly in the firelight, would always be a reminder that balance with the earth was the true key to survival. And as long as the stones stood, so would the legacy of the tribe's wisdom.